fight for family. A Paw Patrol story. Chapter 11. While everyone woke up, Chase ordered Robot Dog to park the plane in an abandoned parking lot. Thanks to the new camouflage system, the king and his men had no idea that they were in Barkingburg. Once the plane was parked, Chase explained the plan. "So we all know our parts to play, right?" Chase asked. Everyone nodded. "Good, but just for safe measures, I'll explain it again. Marshall and I will head to the castle and wait by the entrance to dungeon. Solon and his team, along with Sweetie, will head to the front of the castle. You will grab the attention of his army so we can safely free the princess and the earl. Do not engage unless it's necessary. Luna, you and your pack will meet with Zeus and figure out if he will lend his paw in our cause. We won't use our vehicles so that we won't make too much noise and alert the enemy. Once the princess is at the safe house, we will have to discuss the next part in further detail." "Understood," Luna said. "You can count on us," Solon exclaimed. Everyone muttered in agreement. "Thanks everyone for being here," Chase told them as the side door opened. "Best of luck. And if you run into trouble, contact the others. Let's go, Marshall." With that, Chase and Marshall bolted off, disappearing around the corner into a street that headed towards the castle. Luna and her wolves ran off in the opposite directions, towards the forest. Before any of his men could move, Solon stopped them. "We're gonna have a slight change of plans," he said. Solon pulled up the map of Barkingburg. He looked at his second-in-command, Ronan. "Ronan, I need you to lead the team into position here." Solon marked an alleyway near the front of the castle. "Wait there until Sweetie and I meet up with you there." "Copy that," Ronan stated. "Where will you be going?" "I have to check on Ranger and Chase," Solon replied. "Chase?" Sweetie asked, confused. "Who are you talking about?" Solon looked at her. "Ranger is the name of my dog, and his son is called Chase. I talked to Chase, the Paw Patrol Chase, and he said it was best to check on them now." Sweetie nodded understandably. Solon looked back at Ronan and his men. "We should meet you there in 15 minutes after you arrive. If I don't arrive by then, start the mission as planned." "Yes, sir," they all said in unison. The 6 men marched out of the plane and headed towards the meet-up point. Solon and Sweetie walked out of the plane and looked around. The sky was dark and partly clouded. Thanks to the lack of lights in the area, they could see stars that filled the gaps between the clouds. Sweetie looked at Solon. "Which way are we headed?" "That way," Solon said. Him and Sweetie walked down the street. They turned left once, right, and then left again. They arrived at a gray house with white trim and brown doors. "We're here," Solon stated. He went to unlock the front door, but the door was already open. He was certain he didn't leave it like that. He signaled to Sweetie that they need to be quiet and careful. Sweetie nodded, understanding what was happening. Solon pulled out his pocket knife and opened the door. The inside of the house was a mess. The couch was flipped over, broken glass and plates littered the floor, and the chandelier was in the middle of the floor. "What happened here?" Sweetie asked softly. "I'm not sure," Solon confessed. "But my dogs aren't here." He noticed something on the table. He picked it up and examined it. It was a photo of Solon and his dogs by his side. In red ink, someone wrote you weren't home, but guess who was? Tristan. Solon was so angry that launched the photo and the nearest wall, shattering the frame into pieces. "Jason took them," he told Sweetie. "How did he know where you live?" "I don't know, maybe he hacked into the prison computer, had an inside man, followed my dogs home. The point is, this place is no longer safe. Not while Jason is a threat." Solon got a message from Ronan. "They're in position," he said aloud. "Let's go." "What about Ranger and Chase?" Sweetie asked. The only way to help them is by completing our mission. If we don't, we could be putting everyone at risk. Solon stormed out of the house. Sweetie looked at the photo with the writing. She couldn't understand how someone could be so cruel. She only hoped that the others weren't hurt. Solon was right. The only way to help any of them was to finish their mission. But one way or another, Sweetie wanted Jason to pay. She ran off after Solon, closing the door behind her. Continue to next part. Add. Fight for Family A Paw Patrol. Chapter 12. Chase and Marshall ran up to the side of the castle, next to the main bridge. Since it was dark outside, the soldiers didn't notice them. So what now, Chase? Marshall asked. We wait for the signal, he replied. All of a sudden, fireworks lit up the bridge. An alarm went off. Chase and Marshall looked up to see the front doors of the castle swing open and soldiers run out to see what was going on. They looked at the other side of the bridge. Sweetie, Solon and his men were launching more fireworks as a distraction. Solon looked at Chase and Marshall and smiled. One of his men, who Chase knew was named Ronan, threw an object in front of the soldiers. Flashbang! One of the soldiers called out. Chase and Marshall instinctively looked away as the stun grenade went off. When it did, Chase and Marshall got slight ringing in their ears, but nothing serious. When they looked back up, their team was gone. They couldn't have gone far, one of the soldiers said. Find them. The soldiers crossed the bridge and started going down the city streets with flashlights and guns. Guess that's the signal, Marshall said softly. Chase nodded. Come on. Chase and Marshall walked quietly alongside the castle, trying not to attract any attention. When they reached the entrance of the crawlspace, they looked around to make sure no one was watching them. On the other side of the river, two soldiers were walking down the street. Okay, Chase said. Let's go. They went inside the crawlspace and resurfaced inside the castle. Chase poked his head out the hole and looked around. The dungeon didn't change from the last time he was there. The open-air cages, the dark corners, and the stairs leading up all looked the same. There was no prisoners in the cells, and no soldiers at the entrance of the dungeon. All clear. Plus. They entered the dungeon and went up the stairs. They were going to enter the hallway when they heard some soldiers walking up. Chase and Marshall hid as the two men passed by. What's down there? One soldier asked. It's the castle's dungeon, the other one asked. Why doesn't King Jason use it? Maybe the Paw Patrol or even the little girl and the old man. King Jason has a very specific way of doing things. He also hates dungeons. So he locked the girl in her room. And the team of meddling pups? I was told that they were going to be transported to the ThreadyRumble base and the CL-18 base. He wanted to split them up so they can't do anything. 2. A radio went off. All unoccupied soldiers, a man through the radio said. Meet up at the main room for rescheduling. On our way, one of the soldiers said. Let's go. The two men walked off. Chase and Marshall looked at the now clear hall and walked out of the stairway. Okay, you heard them, Chase said. The princess and the earl are in their rooms. If we rescue them, maybe they know where the bases are. Chase and Marshall walked through the hallways of the castle. They went up some stairs where no one could see them. They reached the second floor and looked down the hallway. The hallway had 3 soldiers guarding it, one on each end and another one in the middle. How do we get past them? Chase asked. Do you still have a stun darts from the last battles? Marshall asked. Chase forgot about that. Ever since their last fight with Jason, he kept some darts in his pup pack. Ryder upgraded it so that Chase could change the tennis ball launcher to a dart launcher on command. Yeah, I do, Chase said. Then I have a plan, Marshall said. He told Chase his plan. Marshall walked out in the open where the guards could see him. He barked out his water cannons. He launched water at the guards, drenching them completely. The soldiers turned around to notice Marshall before he disappeared around the corner. Call it in that the others are here, one of the soldiers said. I can't, the middle one said. The water damaged the radios. The first soldier lifted his gun. Come on, we'll catch him ourselves. The three men ran after the Dalmatian. But they expect him to have company. When they turned the corner, Chase was ready for them with his dart launcher. Surprise, he said. The German shepherd shot a dart in their legs. It was the only place where the dart could make contact. All three soldiers stumbled backwards. Hurry, the first one said, already feeling the effects. We need to warn the others. They forgot about the pups and ran off down the hallway. They made it halfway down when they fell to the ground. Chase and Marshall walked over to them. All three of the soldiers were asleep. That was a really good idea, Marshall, Chase praised. Thanks, Marshall replied. Chase found a set of keys on one of the men, so he grabbed them. Together, the pups dragged the soldiers one by one into an empty room, walked out, and closed the door behind them. They won't be waking up any time soon, Chase stated. Chase and Marshall walked over to the first set of doors they saw. It had a crown emblem on the door, so they knew it was the princess's room. A chain and lock was wrapped around the handles, holding them shut. Using the keys Chase got from the soldiers, they unlocked the chains and opened the doors. They were met with a girl in a light blue dress and tiara, pacing across the room. She glanced over once before realizing it wasn't the soldiers who opened the doors. She looked back in shock. Your Majesty, Chase and Marshall said, bowing in respect. We have come to rescue you. Continue.